superb. Well, the first story I want to tell you, is the first day I was in medical school, or rather the first day I was in university. The second story was towards the end of my university life, and last was when I was a physician working and going back to my alma mater. And I'll just share with you these three close encounters with E.T. My first day in the university, I was racked by a non-medical student. Medical student, I think if I remember correctly, would not rack another medical student the way art student would do to me. And I remember I was dragged up to the faculty and was this great big building. And this guy said to me, and very quickly ran off and said, "I want you to dig up that sign standing at a corner." And I walked sheepishly up there, and the sign read, "Dean's Office." So being terrified, a Ulu boy from Sarawak, totally innocent, and even terrified by Margaret Tong's miniskirt. I went with, just some very simple wooden stick, tried to dig up that sign. And as I was doing it, there was a short Indian man walking around, taking an evening walk. He paused behind me and said, "Boy, what are you doing?" I had no idea who he was. If I knew he was the dean, I would have run away. If I had known about his reputation, I'll probably drop dead at that point. But I didn't know who he was, so I turned around and very, sort of sheepishly said to him, I was asked to dig up this sign. He looked at me and he said, "Do you need any help?" I said, "Yes, that would be nice." And truly he helped me dig up the sign to the dean's office. But we all know him as somebody very serious. But even, you just think about it, I was a medical student, and the dean of the medical school helped me dig up that important sign to his office. So that if you like, even at that stage, one can see that this man of such stature has a humanity about him. But obviously at that time, I was a young boy, I couldn't understand all this, but much, much later, when I look back at it, it was so meaningful. Now the second story I want to share with you was towards the end of my university life. I was at that time very active in a little bit of student politics. I was in the House Committee of the Clinical Student Hostel, and we had a little bit of a disagreement with the Vice Chancellor, Ungu Aziz, about how the hostel ought to be run. I won't get into detail, but I would just like to say that the long and the short of it was, Ungu Aziz more or less told us to, in the University of Malaya slang, fly your kite. And we couldn't get to see him. And we waited, called him up, wrote to him, and then one day, we had a message from Mr. Chia. I hope you all still remember who Mr. Chia is, Registrar Office. And his voice over the phone was very stern, very serious, and to me quite frightening. He said, "The dean wants you," meaning me, and three other guys, one of whom is Lim Kuan Ju, to come up to his office. To be summoned by the dean is no joke. It's worse than be called by the most austere principal of a school. So he went up sheepishly to his office, and he asked all of us to sit down. And the first thing he said, "What have you boys been up to? The Vice Chancellor office has been calling me the whole morning and said you have been very disagreeable, you have been upsetting the university, and you are acting like he has always been the last bastion." We're all taken aback. And then he sort of said, "What have you been doing?" So we explained to him what the problem was, and he said, "Well done, boy, carry on." And it was quite a surprise, and we did carry on with a bit of help from him. And obviously we were proven right, and we got our way. The Vice Chancellor of the university gave in to what we thought was the proper thing to do. Now the last story was when I was a physician, and I've come back to the university, and the dean has, I think, retired. And I remember coming down in the lift and was a little bit lost because they have done a little bit of renovation and got into the wrong lift. And when I walk in, somebody walking even faster than me. And when I turned around, I saw Dhanaraj in his white lab coat, spotless, unlike mine, which is all stained. He walked towards me and said something, but I couldn't hear him. But I responded to him by saying, how are you, Prof? He said, fine. How is Sarawak? And I said, you have not changed a bit. He took me by the shoulder and said, what do you mean? Do you mean I'm still as bad-tempered as before? What I meant was, he has such good memory. He still remember after having not seen me for, I think, at least 10 years, to know that I came from Sarawak. But at the time when he said that and took me by the shoulder, there was a gleam of mischief in the eye. And at that point, a little bit more mature, not necessarily a little bit wiser, I suddenly remember that first encounter with him, when that was that little mischief. And suddenly I felt so at home, felt so much an equal, that I remember, quite intuitively, I reached out and, touched him on the shoulder. And unfortunately at the time, I think there were other people around, I didn't quite know whether it's appropriate for two white coat gentlemen to hug each other. In case the other guys there or ladies there thought that, we both have, the wrong type of sexual orientation. I'm trying to share with you this tree story to show his humanity, to show what it's like. Because I think if we look at this room, and that obviously includes our teachers, and ask ourselves, what are we? I'll say, we carry a bit of this and a bit of that from him, so that together we reflect what Dhanaraj wants us to reflect. And I know all of you feel the same way as me, that if we have not met this great man, we will not be here. We would probably be not what we are today. And the only sad thing I'd like to say was that after I qualified, somehow, my own career, the thing I did, seemed to take precedence, that I commit the unforgivable sin, that I never kept in touch. And it was quite obviously, gratifying that the great man himself came down to Kuching to visit me with Pran Sri H.O. Wong, and we had a dinner together. And I remember very proudly taking him on a walk round, and as usual, in his usual style, and I warned my staff, I said, this was the great teacher. If you don't perform well, and by the way, my reputation is, slightly worse than his, as far as my staff is concerned, that you have to reckon with me. And we did perform not too badly. And I remember we came by a patient, and was this woman with primary aortitis with a beautiful abdominal X-ray. He took a look at it and said, this is the best he has ever seen. And he said, could I have it? I said, sure. Well, unfortunately, I could never get a patient to agree for another abdominal X-ray. Anyway, I don't want to drag on anymore, but I'd just like to say that we are all very grateful and enriched by having encountered this extraordinary teacher, and many of us who teach us, our junior, repeat many times sentiments that he has taught us. We carry on and did what he wanted us to do. We never stopped learning. We're still reading journals. And I just hope that, although I'm retired, that hopefully one day I could say I finally pack up my bag when I reach 80, if I could reach 80. Thank you very much.